Hello everyone, Dominic here again. Today I'm going to be talking about how we can know God through physics. So it's not a matter of belief. We can come to know that there is a God through mathematical frameworks. And the one I'm going to be discussing today is going to be the Topological Unified Field Theory, as spoken about and written by Jenny Lorraine Nielsen. And I do speak about this in my Unified Topological Ontology video, which is my own syncretic framework. But today we're just going to be looking at this specific aspect more closely and show that it provides a quantitative framework to understand or support ancient theological beliefs. So what is the Topological Unified Field Theory? It essentially posits that you have existence, which is made up of S1 fiber threads. These threads come together to form layers upon itself. And then once you get to S9, you have the totality of all of these S1 fibers. And then from here, total space, which is represented by S9, will project itself into a specific coordinate where it will fold upon itself to create universes. So we are a universe that is projected from the totality of all S1 fibers, which is represented by S9. So S1 is the fibers, individual fibers. S9 is the totality of all these fibers. And CP4 is the projected space, which we know as universes. So these S1 fibers form a nested geometric hierarchy, with each layer forming a new set of energy. And S1 is represented by, or the S1 variable, I should say, represents electromagnetism. S3 represents the weak nuclear force. S5 represents the strong nuclear force. And S7 represents gluons. And then from here, you have S9, which is the totality of all of these things. The S1 fibers are moved by the coordinates of the U1 phase, which is another variable that the U's just show how the S1 fibers move from S3 to S5 to S7 to S9. So the U1 phase moves the fibers of electromagnetism. The U2 phase moves the charges Beltrami fields, which are just coordinates made by the Hopf fibration. And the U3 phase deals with geometric structural cohesions and colors the degrees of freedoms of quarks within this space. And then from here, gluons and other high-level or high-vector coordinate topological features exist. All this means is that the S1 fibers, they move along a coordinated path, and they are not just randomly moving on their own. They follow predetermined vectors, which quantifies the holonomy of manifolds as they exist within total space. And holonomy, all this means is, if you look at the picture right there on the right with the cat, imagine that thing, that sphere is constantly moving and reshaping itself. Holonomy would be the folds that are made as this shape is moving and folding upon itself. So the S1 fibers, they make the folds and they follow quantified paths determined by the U1, 2, and 3 variables. So the holonomy follows geometric coordinates of Beltrami operators mapped out by the Hopf fibration. And the Hopf fibration is the thing that makes the S1 fibers move with perfect coordination. And the Beltrami operators are left behind essentially by the Hopf fibration to contain the pathways of the S1 fibers. The S1 fibers are what creates holonomy, moving along the vector coordinates of the Beltrami operators. So it's kind of like train rails. But these train rails, they're not really a linear path. It's more nuanced and complicated than just a train on some tracks. The movement of the S1 fibers crystallize in the form of projected space, or CP4. So you have total space, which is projecting a coordinate for these S1 fibers to move through. And as these S1 fibers move through these coordinates, they become manifested potential. So what is the Hopf fibration? It is a mathematical map between topological spaces that satisfies the homotopy lifting property, allowing continuous deformations in base space to be uniquely lifted in total space. So homotopy lifting, all this is just the movement of the manifolds and how they lift each other. And essentially they're going to lift each other into base space. So the deformations are laid out by the Hopf fibration. And it basically, you could say, makes a path or a map for the S1 fibers of electromagnetism to follow. The coordinates, the movements of the fiber move along are determined by the Hopf fibration. So they're moving down predetermined vectors established by this map. If this map was not there, the fibers could not even move because there'd be no way for them to know where to go or coordinate with the other fibers. So it's like a series of circles which never intersect yet link to one another within a shared space. So all the different ways that something can move, or a particular S1 fiber can move, all exist simultaneously, and the Hopf fibration knows all these ways. And so it coordinates all the different ways that all the different S1 fibers can move within a projected space along the map that it lays out for them. So it kind of creates like these circles over circles. It kind of looks like a slinky. And this basically lets the fibers to move through these circles so that they don't interfere with the paths of other fibers. Okay, so there's a limitless number of ways in which things could form, and the Hopf fibration maps out every single one of these forms. So if you look at the pictures on the right, this is just sound moving sand on a flat surface. Now, all the different patterns that the sand could move in all exist However, the sand can only take up one space at a time. The Hopf fibration takes all these patterns that the sand can move in and maps them out in order for the sand to take shape in even just one of these forms. Okay, so basically, it knows everything that could happen, but the S1 fibers can only make one thing happen at a time. And without this knowing of everything that could happen, the S1 fibers would have no way to make anything happen at all. And so this leads to the Beltrami operator. These are vectors mapped and coordinated by the Hopf fibration, which forces the S1 fibers to curl along particular paths. So the S1 fibers can move any number of ways, but they have boundaries that prevents them from moving in ways beyond them. But within these boundaries, there is essentially another set of limitless or infinite amount of ways that the S1 fiber could move. So fibers cannot move out of the boundaries set up by the Beltrami operator, because the Beltrami operator is basically this curvature that forces these straight lines to stay within the curvature. There's no moving out of the operator or the Beltrami operator unless the S1 fiber moves through that specific coordinate in a way that it's supposed to, which is typically done through time, which is in CP4, time is a spatial dimension. It's like a block universe. But once you're stuck within that coordinate, you can't just make yourself come out of time, and you can't make yourself come out of the Beltrami operator. You have to conform to the curves and the vectors which were set by the Hopf fibration and now laid out in the form of the Beltrami operator. So this ensures that CP4 manifests and projects the potential of total space according to the mathematical precision of the Hopf fibration. So basically, as I said, the Hopf fibration knows every single possible way that the sand can move, and it's impossible for the sand to move any other way than the ways that have been mapped already by the fibration. And so the thing that prevents it from doing this are the Beltrami operators, which have been set in place by the map of the Hopf fibration. These are the things that prevent the sand from shaping in a way that is not known to the Hopf fibration. So it lays out a map, and this Beltrami operator just basically reads the map and then performs its actions with the mathematical precision that the map set for it. It's a differential operator generalized from the Laplacian from Riemannian manifolds, or for them. So the Laplacian is just basically how each different space or particular fiber is different from one another. And the Riemannian manifolds are how they come together to form the folds within total space and projected space. And these govern how the vector fields and differential forms twist, curl, and propagate through the total space. So every movement that an S1 fiber can make is basically filtered through these Beltrami operators, which force the S1 fibers to behave in a way that has been mapped out by the Hopf fibration. And then from here you get the actual S1 fiber threads themselves, or the threads of electromagnetism. These are individual threads of electromagnetism which weave together to make total space, and I don't think one precedes the other. They're both interconnected. To say one comes from or before the other, I just don't see it. And another thing as well is the Hopf fibration is not this separate thing from the S1 fibers or S9 total space or even projected space. It is intimately connected and experiencing all these things at once, all the time. It basically is these things. So these fiber threads wrap around and intersect with one another, forming a nested geometric hierarchy of S3, S5, S7, and S9. But they don't actually touch each other. So if you look at the picture on the right, while these threads are all interconnected, none of them actually physically touch one another. Their fields are just what's interconnected, and they form this structure of rings that wrap around each other. And to picture this nested geometric hierarchy, it's basically like Russian dolls. So you got the small Russian doll inside the big one, inside the bigger one, all the way up to it's essentially limitless. Dimensions do not stop at S9 because the S variables represent spatial dimensions. Dimensions are limitless. The only reason that they stop at S9 for this particular, the topological unified field theory in this framework, is because anything beyond that is essentially unfalsifiable and not measurable by scientific tools. And therefore, it's not useful to science. So S9 just represents the totality of space that we can come to comprehend. And as that projects through the weaving of the S1 fiber threads, it forms a four-dimensional manifested space that each one of these threads moves through. And they follow the coordinates of the Hopf fibration, moving along the Beltrami vectors. And although they follow the path of the fibration, there are a limitless amount of ways in which the S1 fiber could move within the coordinates which have been laid out for it. So as we remember the sand, the sound can make the sand take any number of forms. But the sand can only take one form at a time. But the amount of forms that the sand can take is limitless. And this is the potential of each S1 fiber thread. And this ultimately supports the first three verses of Genesis, which perfectly explains God. These verses right here perfectly explains what God is all about. And the mathematical framework we were just looking at perfectly supports these verses. So, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There is no creation in the sense that God is taking nothing and making it something. This is creation ex nihilo. Instead, it's more appropriate, or more correct, I should say, to think of it as creation ex deo. The heavens and the earth are interconnected, and God is there experiencing both of them. God is what connects the heavens and the earth. The heavens would basically be total space, or S9, and the earth would be projected space, or CP4. And the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters. The waters are the limitless potential of each universe. God, the Spirit, moves over the face of the waters to map out the potential of the universe. And then God says, "Let there be light." And there was light. The breath is the magnetism. The light is the electricity. Electromagnetism are inseparable from one another. You cannot speak without taking breath. And the breath, or the Spirit of God, which moved upon the face of the waters, is the breath which allowed the light to be spoken and shine through. And from here you have your S1 fiber threads. We, human beings here on the planet Earth, along with all our animal brothers and sisters, plants, even the rocks and the mountains, the earth itself, is an S1 fiber thread manifested from the totality of space, or the heavens, projected here on the earth, following the Spirit of God. And this is what God's all about. God is the force which brings together opposites and allows them to experience one another. And that's my presentation. This is how we can come to know God through physics and come to understand that the ancients had a very firm grasp on the universe that they experienced in the world around them. They just didn't have the predictive language that we do today. And that's okay, because they had something sacred. And I'll see you guys again, guys, next time.